Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and however you are listening to us today, absolutely fantastic to have you on this episode. This is a companion podcast to the episode that I did last week, which had Patricia White, the CEO of Suited for Success, a Birmingham-based UK charity. The companion podcasts are our way of having a conversation after the episodes where we've had a guest, just so we can have some reflections and some thoughts about the guests themselves, how the interview went, and maybe some of the learning or the reflections that we had. Joining me on this episode, I have the great and powerful Kevin Green and the insightful and tenacious Stu Trevena. The companion podcasts are quite brief, so buckle up, enjoy the episode, and hope to see you on the next one. Welcome to Leadership Bites with your host Guy Bloom, a leadership podcast, conversations, just me talking and occasional interviews. Check us out at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and tell everyone. So guys, great to have you. Good morning, Stu.
Good morning.
And good morning, Kev.
Good morning.
So I've started to introduce you separately now, so I get the voices distinctly separate. I'm very proud now of my new podcasting skill. I know. Hey, good to get you this morning. So last week I interviewed Patricia White, the CEO of Suited for Success. We weren't quite sure how to do these. Do we have a discussion after the podcast and tag it on the end, or do we do it as a separate companion podcast where we're going for the companion podcast model just to see how this plays out? This is a relatively brief conversation just on commentary. I interviewed Patricia. You guys have listened to the podcast and really just want some thoughts on that individual who runs a charity, who's a CEO of something that has an immense amount of integrity and an immense amount of almost emotional content around it when you start to listen to her. So it'd be great to get your thoughts and reactions.
My first one is I latched on to the strapline of hashtag more than just a suit. I think bearing in mind listening to the types of client and customer that Patricia and the team engage with, the suit only becomes symbolic and a way forward, shaking off an old identity and how people used to see me, and look how I can start to feel about myself when you put me through confidence building sessions, and now you take a set of clothes off a peg, dress me suitably, and now I get a new level of self-confidence, I get a new level of self-esteem, and so the suit becomes symbolic of much more and much better.
So for you, there's a real power there of the metamorphosis that a suit can create.
Absolutely. Patricia underlining that with a comment around, I've had clients in tears because nobody has ever treated her or him like that before. Nobody has ever spoken to me like this before. You can't go in her location, it strikes me. I think I heard looks like a shop front, but it's a bespoke service. You can't just go in there, hope to pick something off a peg and go out with your interview clothes. There's other sessions, there's self-esteem, there's self-confidence, there's CV preparation, there's interview skills. So like I say, the suit is hashtag more than just a suit. The suit just becomes symbolic of the person I can be, and I start to reinvent myself and create a new identity for myself and shake off an old identity of myself.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Yeah. Stu, what about for you?
So I loved it. I found it really interesting. I think Patricia is a great speaker as well. I think the big thing that I took away is you've got a CEO of an organisation that is so deeply passionate and connected to what it is they do and what they look to achieve and the impact they look to create. And I think what was for me, what was really interesting is I listened to the podcast and then I went and told my wife all about the organisation, what they do. I went online and had a little look, and I've heard lots of speakers before, and I've not always done that. And I think that is testament to how Patricia talks about what it is that they do. And I was the same with you, Kev. I think some of the stories that were shared, I'll not say what it is, but there's a great story about a dad and his children when
I was
they go.
going to reference that. You beat me to it. Yeah.
She's demonstrating a lot of the things we talk about, like as leaders. So I think the thing for me, we talk about leadership is about creating followship and movement. And I think interesting, just hearing her talk for that short window, that absolutely happened for me. I was there, I was connected, I understood the why, I started thinking about maybe how I could volunteer or what I could do. And I think that is testament to how she portrays both herself and being completely aligned to what it is that the organisation does. I think the two are absolutely there. And I would imagine, I'd like to think so, you've had the fortunate experience of going in there. I would imagine that's as infectious for those that are volunteering or working around her. I'm pretty confident that would be the culture that I'd kind of of experience in there.
Yeah, there is something about it. It really shows you the power of the individual. I mean, everybody in there has a huge amount of reason to be there, and they're giving of themselves. But if we wanted to talk from a leadership perspective, 2 or 3 things that I see, of course, is a strong personal vision that she holds to and is absolutely on message with all the time. So you do have a sense that whatever she's doing is geared towards the output of the vision / purpose of what Suited for Success is. So what you don't have is a sense of sometimes being, or I imagine from what I saw there, I mean, I did a volunteer day, I'm going to go back and do some more, is I very much doubt that you're being asked, or I never felt that you'd be asked to do anything that wasn't a contribution to the purpose or the vision. We've all worked in commercial spaces where you do sometimes think, why am I doing this? What purpose does it serve? How does it help what we're about? So I think that's really there. She very much, I think, is the experience of servant leadership. There's absolutely no doubt that she's in charge, but at the same time, she is there to be of service to others. And that's as much the people that she has who are volunteering as those that are coming in for help. Those 2 factors are very, very clear, and it creates that fellowship. So in her warmth and in her care is this great strength. So you'd never turn round and go, oh, a charity, I bet the person leading that's a bit fluffy. You go, well, that'd be your first mistake, because as warm and as caring and as genuine as she absolutely is, there's a rod of steel that goes through her about what her focus is. You know, I'm definitely in a mind of when I do coaching with some execs going, I'd like you to listen to this podcast because I'd like you to hear what strength and warmth sound like. I'd like to understand what that means to hold space on both those truths. So I think that really hit for me. She probably wouldn't offer that in her own verbalization of that's what I do, but I think as an observer, I feel that's what I observed.
You know, when you said you couldn't imagine anybody in Patricia's team doing something outside of the vision, I get that. Listening to Patricia on the podcast, I think I heard Patricia talking about the team helping people to tie their shoes, teaching people to tie ties. They polish people's shoes. And I got the sense that that's not beneath anybody. That's not somebody else's job, that they are willing to help at that level.
Yes, and I think that is a very interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, I know in larger organisations there's a greater disconnect from the everyday. That morphs in some respects into, when you look at organisations, the exec team that will sometimes go into a call centre and they've turned up with their own headphones and they'll plug in next to somebody because that's what they do, versus that person who's never obviously sat in a call centre before, doesn't have a set of headphones and wouldn't know what they were listening to. She gets her business. There is nothing that she would see as beneath her, and that by then definition means nor would anybody else that's there.
And you know, like Stu was talking about, she's clearly deeply passionate to the extent that Patricia's job title, if you will, is CEO. She is the CEO of her organisation. But I never got the sense once that that's her job. I didn't feel that Patricia works her job, i.e. it's probably a calling, it's definitely a vocation, and the CEO bit seemed to fade into the background for me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the only reason that title CEO is utilised is for the outside world, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not in play generic.
So, because I listened to the podcast and I thought of a book I've recently read, which is on, and I'm going to probably butcher the pronunciation of this right now. Have you guys come across the Japanese principle of, is it Kaige, I think it's called? Have you heard?
Okay.
It's doing,
purpose. And,
yeah. So Japanese, they talk about these blue zones around the world where they have some of the longest life, and there's this Japanese principle called a Kaige, and it basically boils down to a reason to get out of bed every morning. And there's 4 principles to be met that said gives you a sense of fulfillment and a sense of motivation, sense of purpose. And it's not just purpose alone. It's doing what you love, doing what the world needs, doing what you're good at, and doing what you can be paid for. And I think sometimes we see organisations put a focus on maybe one, but I think what you've got, and maybe this is the reason why she comes across so well, is you've got an individual that feels like though all those are kind of being met. And I think where you say things like a calling, well, actually she's clearly loves it, she's clearly exceptionally good at it based on what goes on, but it is something, there's a big thing of contribution here as well about what the world needs. And I think maybe that's what you've got somebody that's got all those needs being met, and that's what drives that passion, the way she communicates, the way that you infectiously kind of want to know more. before. So maybe I wasn't sure if I was going to mention that or not, but I just read it. The book's in front of me. I thought, you know what? I think that's it. That's kind of the living, breathing version of it. So, for example, if you only meet two of those needs, so what you love and what you're good at, what you've probably got is passion. What you love and what the world needs is a mission. What you can be paid for, what you're good at, will be a profession. But actually, when you get all four met, that's when you get Ikigai. And I keep saying Ikigai, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering how it is pronounced.
No, I think you're saying it right, actually. Yeah, says the person that can't speak Japanese.
There we go. But yeah, so and I think it was because I've just read it and I heard her talk. I think, do you know what? Maybe
I've just WhatsApped it over to you, Kev, on the podcast WhatsApp group.
Thank you,
and thank you for not trying to say it in a Japanese way. I appreciate that, because every ounce of my being wants to try and say it in that way, and I realise there's so much wrong with that, so I'm not going to. So Patricia came across with passion. She came across with integrity. She came across something else that's popped into my mind is that idea of fellowship. Somebody that is, by definition of the experience that you're having of them, creating a sense of you wanting to follow is the overarching phrase, but in essence connect to and to give your energy to, I guess that's the point. So she has no hierarchical position over people. They are contributing, and yet you want to give of yourself to her. So I think that is, as you said, Stu, the living embodiment of a lot of things that are very symbolic about the work that we do with people. We're keeping this one short and sweet because obviously you can listen to the podcast itself. Any other observations or thoughts?
Yeah, about 2/3 of the way through the podcast, you started to reflect back what Patricia's organisation looked and meant to you, Guy. Patricia's words ended up being something along the lines of, actually, Guy, I'm sitting here getting quite emotional. And I think it was just a moment of beauty and joy for Patricia because you were able to reflect back how it looked from an external person's perspective, whereas Patricia is living and breathing it. She's inside it each and every day, all day. It was really nice moment for her to hear your external validation of the value of the work that she does.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because she's never searching for that validation, but at the same time, it's easy for people who are just, in essence, cracking on and doing good to sometimes not get some sort of external validation and recognition. So hopefully that does contribute.
The podcast gave Patricia an opportunity to just sit back, shoulders down, take a breath, soak all of that external observation from you in, and realise the value that she's adding and the contribution that she's making.
Lovely. I'm going to call us to a close. Suitedforsuccess.co.uk if you're just listening to this particular episode, but do check out the episode itself, which is Patricia White. We will do another one of these companion episodes when we interview the next person. Boom. Fantastic.
Thank you. Cheers.
We have some other guests lined up as well. Paul Foreman, COO for MICA, Kath Possamai, CEO Recruiting Group for the British Army, Major General Paul Nansen, Commandant of Sandhurst, and Dave Ulrich, the HR Guru, and others as well that are coming online. If you're enjoying, please subscribe, tell people about us and promote the podcast as much as you can. That's my call to arms because, we're new, we're trying to get off the ground and it's exciting times for us. Any thoughts or ideas or topics that you'd like me to cover, any suggestions of people that you think would be great for me to interview, let me know. On that note, it's been a pleasure and see you on the next episode. Take care. That's it. Subscribe so you keep updated on new episodes. Visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with us and find out more. This has been Leadership Bites. See you soon.